I just wanted to talk about some strategies that we've used, also some feedback that we got from our Eston report, specifically about oracy, because I think it links to a lot of things we've said today about these common issues that we're seeing across schools, I think. So firstly, they did point out a few positive things. They did point out that when teachers are questioned skillfully and probing students' understanding, the students are able to offer insightful comments using relevant terminology, but actually the descriptor they use is a few pupils. Obviously, we'd like to see that descriptor much higher than that. We'd like many or most pupils to be able to do that. They also said that many pupils engage well in discussion with their peers and express their opinions clearly. We were really happy with that feedback because group discussion is something we focus a lot on across the whole school. But, and these were the points for me to take away and are going to form my development plan for the next academic year in terms of oracy. They said that most pupils were only given brief. The answers were appropriate, but they were brief when they were asked questions by their teachers, and a few older pupils were more reluctant to answer. And I think that's something we've talked about today. They maybe come in year 7 with a lot of enthusiasm, and then if that isn't developed and nurtured, by the time they get to year 10 or 11, they really do not want to speak during lessons, and they're very embarrassed about speaking. And they did say as well that a few pupils were not using subject-specific vocabulary well enough. And I think that really is indicative of what we've been talking about in terms of students not really knowing how to conduct themselves maybe in a more formal environment and to adapt their talk to a more formal register. So again, that's something that we're going to be working on now for the next academic year. So we've talked a lot about what the barriers to student progress in oracy might be. I just hopefully, if the video works, wanted to show you a little discussion I had with 3 of my year 10 students about this topic. I asked them why they thought oracy was important, what they perceived as some barriers, and what they'd done to overcome those barriers. Just before I put the video on, Jack, who's in the middle, he's got a very serious demeanor. He looks like he did not want to do it. I promise you he volunteered to speak and he is not under duress, promise. So Leanne, I'm going to try and play it from my end. Let me know.
I was going to say, Jess, that I'm not sure your PowerPoint is moving forward when you're clicking it either. I've made you a presenter, but yeah, I think we'll just keep an eye on that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, is it moving to the video now?
No.
Okay, one sec. Let me see if I can. Is that working now?
Something is happening. Yep. Can everybody see that? I can. We've got it, Jess. It's up.
Okay. The final barrier is whether the sound works. Let's see.
Okay, so first question, why do you think speaking and listening is important?
I personally think that speaking and listening is important because when you're speaking for things like speeches, it really helps people's confidence when speaking in front of a crowd, and it also helps them with also social skills as well. So it shows they can engage with a larger audience and a small audience, and it also can maybe help them speak out openly about topics maybe they wouldn't usually before in their like smaller groups. But when speaking in front of a larger audience, there's different people with different opinions.
I feel like it can help you articulate yourselves and increase your opportunities for things like business and relationships later on in life. I also think that it boosts your confidence, as Katie said.
I think it's just important overall because it's used in life every day without fail, and you need it definitely for like interviews and jobs. Every job you go in, you'll need speaking and listening.
Very good. So my second question is, it's become a bit of a national priority improving speaking and listening because there are lots of obstacles to students improving in that area. What do you think some of the obstacles might be that maybe you've noticed in school?
I think some of the obstacles are, there's more things like anxiety and social anxiety. So it makes people very wary about speaking in front of larger crowds or in front of people, and especially in silence as well. I feel like people get more uncomfortable in those kind of scenarios, so it kind of makes them feel a bit isolated or awkward, especially with like things we've had like COVID, where there was a massive like 2-year gap where people couldn't really speak to each other. So I feel like that's put a big stop to like able to improve people's, especially children's, speaking abilities and able to speak openly to a crowd. So I feel like that's a very large obstacle. So then it kind of stops and pauses the education to be able to broaden themselves, like Jack said earlier.
With COVID and things from each other, so they relied on technology. And as we've slowly come out of the lockdown, people have struggled to reconnect other than technology, which is it's created like a changing language with different and informal uses of vocabulary, which is affecting everyone's way of communicating, creating a language barrier between everyone, especially between the older generation and younger generation. I also feel like the parental influence is changing how people speak by affecting their anxiety and other things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like technology and stuff like that, whereas people are talking not in person much anymore, either over phone calls, like text messages, makes it sound it's not, and people are not used to seeing people face to face, which I think brings anxiety with it. Yeah.
Okay, so final question. Something we've tried to focus on in school, giving you more opportunities to develop your confidence. What would you say that you've done this year or the last couple of years in school that you think has helped with that?
So one of the things I did was speak in the assemblies with UMass, and Ryan, I think you were there. You spoke in one of the World Book Day assemblies, which was in front of year 7, 8 and 9, which I personally think really helped boost my confidence speaking in front of a crowd because of how much of a large audience it was than I'm used to. So whereas it did put me a lot out of my comfort zone, it really helped me like feel better about myself when speaking in front of an audience for things like speeches, especially when you only have little things like prompt cards. It just made me a lot comfortable around other people and more confident in myself as a speaker, and I felt like I was more able to express myself a lot easier now.
Before, I couldn't really express myself and I was really shy when going to presentations. But in class, I tried to answer more questions and just be overall more inclusive. I think that's helped me boost my confidence. And then I recently joined the book club with UMass, and I think that's helped me open up and talk a lot more. I'm also doing a scuba diving course, which I have to get involved with other people and show them some of the skills. I think that's helped me boost my confidence.
Yeah, whereas for me it was like drama as well, I believe, because I've done drama since like year 7, and because I've been doing it after school and like school shows and Shakespeare Festival, I believe that's really boosted my confidence because I've done it in front of like a really large audience.
Okay, hopefully that worked and it wasn't just 5 minutes of silence. I'll just share my PowerPoint again if I can. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because a lot of the things they said were things that we've said today, but some of the other things they brought up that I thought were quite sad when they said now this disconnect between the older generation and younger generation, where maybe we don't understand the way that each other communicate and choose to communicate. And I think the fact that they are so aware of all the barriers, I think is quite interesting as well. And they do see the importance, but I think it's just for some of them it's so difficult to overcome it. And I think Jack, it was that mentioned, for some of them they're not talking to their parents, which really doesn't help either if we're the only adults they're talking to in a day. So I just wanted to go through some of the strategies we're using. Some of these have already been mentioned, so I'll just whiz through them. I think it might have been Sophia that was mentioning this habits of discussion. We use this across the whole school, so this idea of giving students roles in discussions, and as Julia mentioned, they are really well linked to the expectations of the GCSE course. So there's marks on the mark scheme for introducing topics, move the discussion forward, so being the instigator, building on viewpoints of others, challenging each other appropriately, and also being able to summarize ideas that other people give. So we use this in discussions all the way through Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. They are on the classroom walls all across the school. And it's something in lesson observations and things we would look for. So they are quite familiar with these speaking frames. We also get them to develop some of their own frames for speaking as well. So that was something we were happy that the inspectors had noticed when they were attending lessons. Something that we've been trying to do in Key Stage 3, and I think we've all sort of mentioned the importance of not just expecting them to be able to talk at Key Stage 4 if they haven't been speaking at Key Stage 3. We've tried to do a lot of sort of the talk for writing strategies. So we're currently in Year 8 talking about improvements to the school, and we have competitions where they are going to talk about their ideas before they write them down. And we use this sort of bullseye strategy where they feed back and they're trying to use as many of the really high level words, so the ones in the middle, as possible. And we talk about the meanings of the words. And then after they've talked to their partner and fed back, then they will do the writing task afterwards. But it all will start with talking and understanding the vocabulary and using a more formal register, I think, when they're talking. Leanne, are the slides moving forward now? Someone's nodding, so I hope so.
Yes, yes, they are all good.
In terms of reluctance or outright refusal, which I think we're all dealing with in our school contexts, something that, and I don't know if this would work in other schools, but something that I found that really helps in my context is that if you have a class in Year 9, unless there's staffing changes, you will keep that class all the way through to Year 11. So I think a lot of the time is creating that environment where they feel comfortable talking, and that has to be the foundation of any really organic talk in the classroom. So my Year 10s that were just in that video, I've taught them since the start of Year 9. It's always formed a part of our lessons. They're used to talking, they're used to having to talk, and they really enjoy it because it's something that they're comfortable doing. So that really helps with like not opting out, not having an environment where they feel comfortable saying, no, I'm not doing it, because they've done it all the way through school. With classes where they're really reluctant to talk, something that I've started doing in terms of not opting out is having competitions where there's rounds and then a final. So everyone will perform in front of a small group. So those really reluctant speakers still have a small audience, and they get to pick those people that they're working with. And then the winners of those small groups will perform in front of the class. So that means that everyone is developing some oracy. I will be circulating to check the oracy skills in the groups, but then those MAT performers get a bigger audience, so they're also being challenged, and they're getting to do that then in front of the whole class. So my Year 10s, lots of them now are performing in front of whole classes, which when we're thinking forward to Year 11, when they're going to do their speeches, when actually they don't do it in front of a big audience, they're going to then find that hopefully a lot easier because it's an environment that they're used to. It's also a really good time saver because with a big class, I think a lot of the time we're talking about lesson and curriculum constraints. It's so hard to get 35 students to do an individual presentation in class, and then sometimes you lose momentum because it takes 2 or 3 weeks. The kids are getting bored listening. This way, you can do it in 2 lessons. They are all speaking, and then the finals the following lesson, and they quite enjoy it as well. They enjoy the competitive element of it. So we've just done, we're doing a utopia and dystopia scheme of work to introduce the language skills, and they are writing speeches about the country in the world they think is the closest to utopia, trying to persuade other people. So we've had like a mock United Nations or United Newbridge Utopian Nations. I quite enjoyed the whole role play of speaking and listening, and then they get to vote for which country they think is closest to utopia. So I've introduced that sort of thing to make it a bit more engaging as well. And moving on from that, quite similar, but making sure that there are these real environments for formal speech, that they don't feel artificial, and that actually we give speaking some prestige in the curriculum, because I do think if you ask students, they do think there's a hierarchy of literacy skills and that reading and writing is more important than speaking. And I think we've not necessarily helped that as teachers sometimes. I think we make the hierarchy quite clear. So when we were doing Of Mice and Men in English, we did a court case, and I think lots of people use this for Of Mice and Men, who's most responsible, who or what's most responsible for Curly's wife's death. But I made sure that we talked a lot about the language of the courtroom and that it was really structured. So they had to come up with, as teams of defense lawyers, opening statements. There was cross-examination in the middle. They had to come up with a closing statement at the end. And we made sure that it seemed really serious and formal. And there was a judge and a jury and all those sorts of things. So it didn't just feel like a tag on or the exercise to tick a box. And it actually was developing their understanding of how to form a good argument and evaluating characters' motives and all those sorts of things as well. And this is something that we do across the school. So history are really good at this, court case sort of oracy-based tasks. Also in skills in year 9, they have to design an app and then pitch it sort of Dragon's Den style. But we make sure that there is an audience for that. So I invite other teachers in to come and judge the oracy and things like that. And I found they really love actually having an audience to show off to, and they take it a lot more seriously if they think there is really going to be someone listening and judging and giving them feedback and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's something that we've been working on to try and encourage oracy across the curriculum. And finally, in terms of what we need to do next, I think more consistent whole school approaches. We have the habits of discussion, which is very group discussion based, but I think some whole school approaches like Julia mentioned, where maybe staff are working together and staff that are less comfortable are given support by more comfortable staff that are more comfortable with oracy skills, and making sure there's that extracurricular, because I think it's about creating a culture where students feel comfortable speaking, but also where they're given some leadership responsibilities. So I think, as Katie said, delivering assemblies, giving them that audience of maybe 200 pupils, nothing is going to improve their confidence like that well, and making that a part of the school environment and the school community. So yeah, that's me finished. Thank you.